What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with another dose of all that good. Bunch of stuff to talk about. I'm going to do my early 2024 Oscar predictions. Going to go through all the movies that I think are in the mix next year. Super early, super ahead of time. We're going to do it anyway. It'll be fun. Also going to review DC's latest superhero film, Shazam 2, Shazam Fury of the Gods, the Chinese blockbuster Full River Red, aka the highest grossing movie in 2023 thus far. We're also going to talk about 100 Gecs, second album, 10,000 Gecs, as well as the return of Ted Lasso Season 3, perhaps the final season of Ted Lasso. So, a bunch of stuff in the ether to get into here. Of course, make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. Check the link below for the Nostalgia Best of 2023 Spotify playlist. Follow that, and let me know what's good. All right, and now let's move on to 100 Gecs. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of 100 Gecs' second album and major label debut, 10,000 Gecs. New album from hyperpop EDM duo Dylan Brady and Laura Less. I think there's a lot of anticipation, a lot of hype, a lot of excitement about the next Gecs record. And that would largely be because it's been a while since we got the first Gecs album. That was back in 2019. That'd be 1,000 Gecs. And since then we got the remix album, we got the Christmas single, we got a brief 3-track EP last fall. Laura Less had a solo single, Haunted, which we saw and heard in Euphoria season 2. They've been around, but we've been waiting for the Gecs next step. They're about to go on tour again, and now they have that new material. And funny enough, upon further review, a lot of this music that is on 10,000 Gecs, an album I loved, by the way, a lot of this music had actually already been out for those in the know. They had performed this on tour in 2021 and also performed a lot of these songs at Coachella 2022. How about that? This album's been delayed and pushed back, and it seems like a lot of these songs were in the can, at least in some form, for a while now. Either way, we have the album 10,000 Gecs, 10 songs, 27 minutes, very brief, but I think incredibly memorable because it really feels like a Gecs evolution, a Gecs next step, really exciting. I think in 2019 and a little bit before that, when 100 Gecs blew up as this act, they're quickly placed as the face of hyperpop, the new ascendant EDM subgenre, and for good reason. I think that was what they were doing in terms of making these crazy out there looping OD bass songs. It was refreshing because it was new and hard to predict what would be next when you listen to songs of that genre. And of course, hyperpop has really blown up and has really found a niche on TikTok for sure. But I think Gecs are still the face of that. And it's interesting to hear what would be next, with more time and more attention on them. And I'm happy to report that on 10,000 Gecs, they've really kind of diversified and expanded that sound, but still very much feel and sound like the Gecs that we know and love. Just plainly speaking, I think 10,000 Gecs is really awesome. Starting right off the bat with track 1, Dumbest Girl Alive, that, has kind of like a movie score opening, and then very quickly transitions into, of all things, the Coheed and Cambria riff from Welcome Home, their smash hit from 2006. Where the fuck did that come from? What a pull. And I mean, to me, it's clear as day. It is the same tempo, it is the same strumming, and it hits, man. And then, of course, they jump into a Gex song after that. And I think the Laura vocals are really cool. But, that just, I tweeted this out. That melted my face off. Hearing the Coheed and Cambria riff. I thought that was fucking awesome. And that, to me, that is, the ethos of what Gecs do, what hyperpop, when it's good, can do. This is a genre that is very much all about excess, but when things are done just right, it's pure brilliance. I think of Money Machine off the first album as an example of that. But Dumbest Girl Alive to me is clearly the best song on this album, and just an amazing construction. I love it. And you can find that on the Nostalgia Best of 2023 Spotify playlist. Check the link below to follow that. Following it up, 757, 757, kind of, I would assume, the sequel to 747 Sticky, one of their big songs off the first album. More traditional Gecs hyperpoppy song, pretty solid. But to me wasn't quite as exciting after what Dumbest Girl Alive like blew my mind with just beforehand. Track 3, which is I believe the second single, has been getting some attention. That would be Hollywood Baby, which is fun because again it's a bit different. The vocals on this are clear as day, like Blink 182, some 41 pop punk in terms of the kind of nasally like pitch and just the overall like energy and the lyrical subject matter. Like it's clearly inspired by that in a fun way and still feels like a Gex song. So you gotta love it. Track 4, they kind of slow it down quickly with Frog on the Floor with this softer vocal and this like distinct drum line. Not really a hyperpop song at all. Um, Jumping back into that, you have I believe the first single, Doritos and Fritos, which is I think just a really solid like Gex song, a great example of like classic Gex hyper pop. Maybe not the most interesting song on this album, but just pretty good. Billy Knows Jamie, the next one, that one stood out to me because the vocals really reminded me of all people like Matt Champion of Brockhampton in terms of that kind of like flow rapping. Um, and very quickly, you get the rap rock Limp Bizkit homage. You know, again, another genre being kind of transposed, transfixed into hyperpop. I thought that was really cool and convincing. You know, I think $1 million. That one's pretty repetitive, not that great, but still kind of a headbanger in terms of how it sounds, how it hits. So not that bad. And then again, I got my tooth removed. It's a fucking ska song. Like, where did that come from? And then they end with one of the other singles, "Me Me Me," which is a classic Gex song. Just has an incredibly catchy melody, and it's just so sticky. Like, and that's 10 tracks in less than 30 minutes. It's so awesome. And yeah, I mean, clearly Gex, clearly hyperpop are not for everyone. That is certainly not changed with this new album. Of course not. But to me, this is really exciting stuff because it's bringing new genres and not new genres, but bringing other genres and stuff that's not super mainstream as well into that hyperpop and Gex orbit and just doing fun stuff with it. Because I think that's what Dylan Brady and Laura Les are kind of all about, you know. And they've been active in the industry as producers and songwriters for other people at this point. They're both really talented people, but at the end of the day, I think you listen to their whole discography at this point, and it's clear that like having fun and doing inspired things to them is what they're about. And you can't really ask for anything more from an artist. But let me know, how'd you feel about 10,000 Gex? Did you like it more than the past Gex work? Is a different song, The Dumbest Girl Alive, your favorite like it is mine? Let me know. And for more EDM reviews, music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, now let's move on to the return of Ted Lasso. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Ted Lasso Season 3, the return of Ted Lasso for seemingly its final season, according to Jason Sudeikis. Ted Lasso is almost certainly not gone for good after this season, but it seems like, from what everyone's telling us, the core Lasso story and narrative surrounding Ted specifically as a character is seemingly wrapping up. And that was just how this was kind of envisioned by the creative team that Sudeikis is a part of. And honestly, I welcome it. I'm happy that Lasso's ending the way it is. If you check our review on Ted Lasso season 2, you might remember that I'm not the biggest Ted Lasso guy, although I thought season 2 was better than season 1. I think it's a very interesting show in terms of why it's popular and what it does well and doesn't do well. And it's just kind of funny to me how that's all shaken out and where we're leading with this season 3. I thought the season 3 premiere was kind of more of the same, continuing where we left off with season 2. And I'll just be curious how the dramatic stakes kind of land when we get to the end of the season, you know, in a few months. Just plainly, like, the dramatic like tension was clearly elevated as what this show was really concerned about with season 2, and I really appreciated that. You know, Ted going through his struggles mentally in terms of finding his purpose and what really matters to him. Keely and Roy separating and figuring out where they need to go in their lives. Of course, Nate having his overwhelming insecurity kind of push him into full heel and join West Ham and become a rival of AFC Richmond. We're really happy about that because season 1 to me just fell really flat because it's a really wholesome show. Ted Lasso telling his dad jokes, really earnest. That's nice, right? It's a nice show. And yeah, that's all fine and good, but it's not a funny show. That's my issue with it. It's a comedy that doesn't make you laugh. Like this pales in comparison to like a good HBO comedy, pales in comparison to something like What We Do in the Shadows. It's just not that funny. So at least leading into the dramatic stuff, like they did in the back half of season two, I at least can get behind because I find it's at least a bit more interesting than the kind of like lackluster joke telling that is the rest of the series. My big issue with like the show in general is that it is so allergic to tension and making anyone in conflict with the core characters. Jamie Tartt gets pulled back and becomes a good guy. Of course, Rebecca, the antagonist of season one, is now full on good guy, you know? And they're already setting the stage in one episode with season three about Nate's redemption because he's really just really insecure and that's why he's a huge dick and that's why he went to West Ham. And it's like, they can't let anything sit, can they? And that's okay. A lot of people love the show. That's not why that doesn't do it for me, but it does it for a lot of people. Whatever. So I'm just hoping that they really lean into Nate being the heel and they don't immediately start pulling him back in season three. Hopefully they give it enough time because they will pull him back. We know that. But like I just hope they at least let the tension and conflict simmer for at least a little bit. We'll see. I think some people they're just happy to be in the world, quote unquote, be with Ted. But then again, being with Ted isn't as fun as it used to be because Ted's got a lot of shit going on. I'd rather be with that than watch him tell the dumb dad jokes again because we've heard all those dumb dad jokes. They don't feel like they don't hit the same anymore. The whole like rousing people up in the sewer like they do in season three to motivate his team. I don't know how many times we need to see scenes like that on this show before they start to get stale. Then again, it is the final season, so hopefully it's not going to wear out its welcome. But I'm not as high on Ted Lasso as other people are. But let me know, how did you feel about the season three premiere? Are you more optimistic than me? Are you looking forward to a spin-off with Keeley or someone else? Because we know Ted Lasso will return as a world soon enough. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, and now let's move on to movies. We'll start with Shazam! Fury of the Gods. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Shazam! Fury of the Gods, the Shazam sequel from DC, the latest superhero film. We'll talk about the movie itself, as well as its very poor box office performance, and what that may mean. And yeah, let's get into it. So I like Shazam, the first one, back in 2019. Kind of just a fun, lighthearted romp, not super connected to the DCEU canon. It was a decent, fun time. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty amusing. Now I get the sequel, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and it has not done well critically and has not performed at all commercially, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Ultimately, I think Shazam 2 as a film is less successful than the first one, kind of obviously. And there's a few, I think, pretty key reasons why that is. I think Shazam 1, the reason why it was so charming was, you had Zachary Levi as, adult Shazam. His kind of adult with kid relationship with Jack Dylan Grazer's character was really fun and amusing. Adult and kid story, kind of like the big premise that was just nice to be with. And um, when you don't have Levi, you have young Asher Angel and then playing off Jack Dylan Grazer, and like that kind of dynamic I think worked pretty well. The issue now with Shazam 2 is, well, Jack Dylan Grazer and Asher Angel are teenagers now. Or their characters are. They're even older, obviously, in real life. And it's just not quite the same dynamic when they're teens as when they're kids. It's just kind of a different vibe. Also, like, there's a lot less Asher Angel in general in this film, in the sequel, which I think kind of like takes you out of the kind of grounding stuff that was kind of part of Shazam, in terms of like the found family, chosen family themes that I think actually were pretty effective. And also, at the end of Shazam, the rest of the family, the Foster family, they all get powers too and kind of become their own versions of Shazam. That is kind of fun in the second movie, but they don't really have a lot to do, the rest of the family. And it almost kind of like takes away from like Shazam, like Prime, as being like a big deal. He just kind of gets more screen time. So I don't know. It was kind of a different like energy shift for me. I didn't really love it. The antagonist this time around is the Daughters of Atlas, which is, it's connected well enough in the first movie. And of course, these new villains are Helen Mirren, Lucy Liu, and Rachel Zegler. And I think they're okay as villains. They're totally fine. Like they're pretty one note with motivations, and the best stuff, of course, is given to Rachel Zegler, who's like the one good antagonist from the start. Um, and the CGI, I think, in general, is actually pretty serviceable. And the issue overall is like the second half of this movie really falls apart, and it's kind of like the classic failed superhero film third act, except it's more than the third act. It's like the second half of Act Two as well as all of the third act. CGI looks fine, but there's just a lot, I think, issues that like dramatically there's just not enough tension to what's going on, and in the process, it's like this bigger like world saving set pieces and stuff, which kind of feels like at odds with like the appeal of Shazam 1 as a film and as a story. So it's just kind of like a mixed bag overall. I had a decent enough time with it more often than not, but like a great example of like just a kind of obvious issue is at the end here, like Act 3, when you have all these CGI like beasts being unleashed by the bad guys, right? We'll just keep it brief here. Um, all the other Shazam family members, they have to, fight off these beasts, and they're like riding unicorns and stuff, playing off some old jokes set up in the beginning of the movie. But like, basically, they don't do anything in the movie. They don't do anything consequential. They're just kind of off to the side until the rest of the story is resolved, and it's just a huge waste of time. And like, I think if we had removed the classic CGI things fight normal people must save the day stuff that we know so well and was terrible in Black Adam, for example, we'd removed all of that. Maybe it was something else. It probably just would have been more fun to be with. Again, I don't have a good suggestion. I don't like to criticize in that manner, but like it was clear that the Shazam family members were doing absolutely nothing for the last 30 minutes of the movie, and that is kind of at odds with the whole way the movie is supposed to be in the beginning, where it's presenting this whole group and trying to change that dynamic in the movie. So I think that was just kind of a big issue. I mean, we can talk about the performance. Man, I mean, 30 million opening weekend. It's the lowest theater only release for a DC film since Constantine back in '05. And of course, with adjusting for inflation, that'd be even worse statistic. Um, yeah, I mean, Shazam 1 was like a modest hit due to being priced kind of modestly, and then performing solidly. And Shazam 2 just I think it has a kind of interesting issue with why the marketing failed with this. Um, there's nothing engaging you as a DC fan or comic book movie fan to go see this movie, because we know so clearly that this movie doesn't matter to the storytelling. And we know that serialized storytelling in franchises is so important. James Gunn and Peter Safran, we know that their DC Studios slate and refresh is underway. We're just playing off the string with the old DC EU stuff that was already in the can. So these post-credit scenes have literally negative meaning. They don't matter at all, and it's actually kind of funny to encounter post-credit scenes that everyone knows already have no bearing as they're watching them. It's kind of funny, but I just didn't think anyone was super engaged enough to go seek this movie out, knowing it didn't really matter to long-term storytelling. And on top of that, the reviews not being that strong, the audience reception not being that strong for some of the reasons I outlined. When it's not that great of a film, and you know that it doesn't really matter to long-term franchise storytelling, there's not a lot getting you out to the theater to go seek it out. So will it perform pretty good on HBO Max in a few months? I'm sure it will. I'm sure people will be checking it out then, but it's clear that like this was not a must-see thing. And you're seeing that in the worldwide performance, you're seeing that in the China performance. People are just kind of uninterested. And it's kind of a tough break for DC, but it is what it is. Rachel Zegler, thankfully, this will not be one and done for her in the franchise game. I think she's a really good actor. She's tremendous in West Side Story, and for what she's given to do, I think she's pretty solid in Shazam 2. Some of the early stuff between her and Jack Dylan Grazer was actually really fun and really nice, and kind of reminiscent of some of the best stuff in the first Shazam movie. Zegler, though, thankfully, will be in the Hunger Games prequel coming out later this year, and of course in Disney's Snow White live action remake in 2024. So we'll be seeing plenty of Zegler on the big screen in the future. But yeah, I mean, there's really no reason to expect more Shazam in this iteration. It's pretty obvious. Black Adam failed. Um, Shazam 2 is failing as well. And yeah, if we ever see Shazam and Black Adam again, it'll be a reset. you know, probably 10 years. So, uh, it is what it is. It's just I think it's just interesting to analyze about why this movie didn't perform. That's probably the most interesting thing about it. It's a decent time, but it's nothing really to write home about. Nothing super memorable. But let me know. Did you like Shazam 2 more than me? Uh, are you sad that we're not going to get a Shazam 3? And for more superhero reviews, more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, and now let's move on to Full River Red. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Full River Red, the new blockbuster film from China, from Zhang Yimou, the illustrious Chinese film director who really needs no introduction, one of the most prolific directors from China in the history of Chinese filmmaking. I think probably most well known to Western audiences for stuff like House of Flying Daggers and Hero, but and he's made a million movies. He's been super prolific for so much for decades, and against all odds, this is his highest grossing film of all time, Full River Red, which, as of the time of recording, has grossed $672 million worldwide to be the number one movie of 2023 thus far. Kind of surprisingly beating out The Wandering Earth 2 at the Chinese Lunar New Year box office battle earlier this year. People weren't expecting that, and honestly, I think it's for good reason. I thought Full River Red was a blast. I thought this movie was really awesome, and I quite enjoyed it. I also reviewed The Wandering Earth 2. I also reviewed Hidden Blades. This is actually the third of the New Year releases, blockbusters that I've seen. It's really fun that these get small releases in the US, and I'm able to check these movies out. And Full River Red, when I saw it, had a packed theater once again. I think people that are in the know are really excited when these movies kind of get released in the US. So it was really fun once again to kind of be in a big crowd for something like this. But yeah, let's just get into it. So I think Full River Red is a lot of fun because it's a period, like historical period drama film, period film, sorry, set in like year 1000, basically the Song Dynasty in China. But it is like a suspenseful thriller movie mixed with a comedy, a slapstick comedy. So it is both incredibly like edge of your seat, like twists and turns, lots of deaths, what's going to happen next, whose side is everyone really on, all of that stuff. And then just really fun jokes and humor, and also really great period detail, an awesome score, and a bunch of great acting. It's kind of everything you want from a movie. If there's one issue I have with it, I think it's a bit too long, and the ending perhaps gets a bit convoluted by the end. There's a lot of twists in this movie. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a lot going on. And maybe it gets a little too far at the end, but overall, I think it's a really fun time, and it really starts to suck you in as you understand what's going on and starting to see those metaphorical battle lines and who's on what side. So I think it's a real big blast. Your two stars really would be uh Zhang Da, played by Shen Tang, the Chinese comedian, and he's kind of like a recruited like soldier underling character, to Sun Jun, who is like a commander at this battalion. And of course, Sun Jun is played by Jackson Yi, the Chinese idol turned actor, who I thought was really good in Better Days, but has since become a huge star over in China. He was in the Battle of Lake Changjing movies, for example. And we're kind of set at this one compound for the whole movie. Really, it's only one location. We're at Quinn Hui's home. He's like the Grand Chancellor, played by Lee Jae-in, and basically, not to get too deep in the plot, but yeah, the Song Dynasty and the Jin Dynasty, they're kind of like rivals at this time in China. And there's a meeting between representatives of the Jin over at this Song compound. Someone gets killed, and then a letter gets destroyed. Yada yada. People trying to figure out who did what, who's on what side, and everything takes place over the course of a few hours in this one location. And there's like really funny moments where like characters will be marching through like the corridors and the halls to like go do something and go talk to someone else or go arrest someone else in the compound, and the score will blare with this not period detail at all, like female wailing, and it's like really funny, really awesome. But other than that, it's pretty grounded in like of the time. And man, I think just like the way that kind of like unravels as you meet like more characters. Like you have Zhang Yi, who's a pretty big actor in China. He plays uh like Chancellor Lee, not a chancellor, but like Deputy Lee. He's kind of like an underling, like bureaucrat character. Him as well as Wu, who's played by Yu Yun Ping, who's like another bureaucrat guy. Those guys are really funny and like, are they good? Are they bad? You kind of like you switch your sides and your feelings, and there's times where like the tables get turned on various characters, and like it's just a really good time. And then I think like this the second half too, like more layers get unraveled, and you encounter Zither, who's like a dancing girl who's in the compound, played by Wang Jiayi. And apologies for these pronunciations. I think she was really great performance as well, and just everyone's kind of allegiances are like really fun to be with in all these twists. I think the movie kind of like doesn't quite end for a while, which is like my one like gripe with the movie. But overall, I just really enjoyed my time with it, and I just thought like the laugh lines are like really funny. Like I think like there's some like incredibly funny stuff here, and then also like really moving stuff when people die and you learn like what they're fighting for and stuff. Are they good? Are they bad? Like there's kind of equal measure of humor and drama in this, in I think a really enjoyable way. And at the end, yeah, it's about the creation of this poem. Full River Red is the name of this historical poem, and it's kind of has a nationalist, patriotic vibe as you might expect. And of course, a lot of Chinese movies have that bend these days. But I mean, it's just kind of grounded in what the movie's about. I don't think there's anything offensive or overt about all that. It was I think it's a great time, and certainly worthy of all the money it's made. I think it's awesome. But let me know, have you seen Full River Red? How did you like it? Have you seen the other Chinese movies this year that I've seen as well? How would you compare them? To me, this is my favorite one I've seen. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, and let's conclude with my early, emphasis on early, my early 2024 Oscar predictions. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with my 2024 Oscar predictions. Of course, these are my early predictions. I'm doing them a year in advance, more or less, or at least, 8 months, 10 months before award season really kicks off. So in advance, but I'm going to go through over 40 films that I think have a really good chance of being in the Oscar picture, the awards race next year. Of course, a lot of caveats with this. A lot of these movies do not actually have release dates yet, so they could certainly not be this award season. I'm going to talk about movies that I've mentioned in the past with this segment that are actually coming out this year and I thought were coming out in the past. Not all these movies have distribution yet. So like there's a lot of things up in the air about this, but in general, these are the films that I think are you can be most confident in expecting to be around next year in the awards race. And it's quite the list of celebrated actors, celebrated filmmakers, people with past Oscar success. Some of these movies have been seen in the festival setting already, and they're well liked. So there's, I think, a lot to be excited about in the next year of film. So that's kind of why I want to do this now. It's really fun. Just a few notes. Some stuff we know is definitely not coming would be Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, which is supposed to come out in 2024. That's obviously still being made. Bong Joon-ho's Parasite follow-up, Mickey 17, is dated for 2024, as well as George Miller's Mad Max prequel Furiosa is also dated for 2024. So those are three movies that probably would be in the mix in some fashion, but that'll be in the future. So just keep that in mind. But we got a lot of stuff to get into. So let's just go into my background here. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer is dated for July, starring Cillian Murphy as well as Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., and a million other people. It's like everyone in Hollywood, basically. Obviously, Nolan is a celebrated filmmaker. You can expect at minimum that this movie will contend in all the down the line technical categories. But if it's really good, you would expect a Best Picture notion as well, and perhaps some acting nods. I think it's kind of obvious that Oppenheimer will be more awards friendly than a movie like Tenet, which is obviously testing to many viewers in terms of comprehension. I love Tenet, of course, but Oppenheimer is much more traditional. So I think we can easily bank on Oppenheimer being in the awards mix in some fashion. Can't wait for that movie. Um, Along these lines, something else you could easily bank, I think, would be Dune Part 2 coming out at the end of the year. Dune 1 was a huge figment of, award season 2 years ago. And, Denis Villeneuve, Chalamet, Zendaya, the huge cast. Like, I think we can expect at minimum that this will have down ballot consideration, best picture consideration. But yeah, I think it's pretty safe. And Austin Butler, is in the mix now because Dune Part Two, he is joining the scene and the movie. Sorry, joining the sequel and seemingly a flashy role, so he could perhaps follow up Elvis with a supporting actor nom. Who can say? That's really exciting though, for sure. Some other big stuff here. Let's talk about Killers of the Flower Moon, the Martin Scorsese movie from Apple, starring Jesse Plemons and Leonardo DiCaprio, among others. Talked about this several years now in the awards mix. It seems like it's going to premiere soon and come out this year on Apple. Obviously, Scorsese, Leo, Jesse Plemons, like it goes without saying, this is in the mix. Can't wait. Um, how about Ridley Scott's film Napoleon, formerly titled Kit Bag, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby? Seems kind of obvious that this will be in the mix. It's Ridley, it's Joaquin. Enough said. Vanessa Kirby, Best Actress nominee as well. Keeping it moving. Wes Anderson has another movie with Asteroid City with a huge cast that you'll come to expect from Wes. Certainly have to keep hit your thoughts with him. How about Yorgos Lanthimos' new movie? We've been waiting for the follow up to The Favorite, which of course was a big Oscar contender. Yorgos, this would be Poor Things, reuniting with Emma Stone. It also has Willem Dafoe in it, Mark Ruffalo. I think this is a pretty obvious one. It's not dated yet. This is something I was thinking about might come out last year. It didn't, but I have a pretty good feeling we'll get Poor Things this year. How about Michael Mann? Not a guarantee, not this stage of his career, but Michael Mann, Ferrari, starring Adam Driver as Enzo Ferrari. I think that one's certainly a contender. Bradley Cooper, his directorial follow up to A Star is Born, which of course was Oscar contender. This time around, Cooper is also starring in the film once again as Leonard Bernstein. And this film is Maestro for Netflix. I think this is an obvious one. Cooper directing, acting, Netflix Best Picture. I feel like this is an obvious one, assuming this movie's good. Like Netflix will be riding this movie. Netflix will also be riding David Fincher's The Killer. Fincher's first film since Mank hasn't been that long, but it's the return of Michael Fassbender. Fassbender hasn't been in a movie since Dark Phoenix in 2019, and before that, it was all these movies in 2017. Fassbender has been away for some time, and he is going to be back in a Fincher film, The Killer. Killer is probably not the most awards friendly film though, so just keep that in mind. But it'll certainly be in the mix in some regard, as will Fassbender's other film this year, which will be from Searchlight, Next Goal Wins, the new Taika Waititi film. Of course, Taika, ton of attention from the Oscars with Jojo Rabbit. This is the follow up to that. This is a movie that, again, like Close the Flower Moon, we've been talking about in the awards conversation for some time. It's finally coming out this year. It is dated. This is a movie that was filmed in 2019, you know, um, but they did some reshoots in 2021, which replaced Army Hammer with Will Arnett. It's finally coming out. Next Goal Wins. To me, I'm just happy. Like it's a shit. It was a shit or get off the pot thing. Like we got to see this movie. So another one. I think it's a big contender. How about Renato Marcus Green? You know, he made King Richard, which was a huge awards contender 2 years ago. His new movie is a Bob Marley biopic, still untitled, but it's been filmed, and that's starring I don't know, Kingsley Benadire as Bob Marley, one of our great new actors, and assumingly a transformative performance. You know how the Oscars and the award season love when actors play real people. I think that's a pretty obvious one to bank on here. Let's see. Got a bunch of other stuff still. How about The Book of Clarence? Little more under the radar pick. This is from James Samuel, his follow up to The Harder They Fall, reuniting with Lakeith Stanfield. It's supposed to be more of an epic film, so that's one to keep an eye on. I think for sure. Hard to say what to predict there, but I think one to keep an eye on for sure. Um, I'll just acknowledge like Mission Impossible 7 is coming out. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 from Chris McQuarrie, starring, of course, Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise was a big fixture of awards season this past year with, of course, Top Gun Maverick. I probably would bank against this having anything beyond below the line contention, especially with Cruise snubbing the Oscars and not showing up to the ceremony. But if it's like the best action movie ever made, yeah, perhaps it could be nominated for Best Picture. But I would just say bank against that one. Um, Something that perhaps is not on a lot of people's radar at all, but that would be Warner Brothers is doing like a remake, kind of reimagining of the Color Purple musical, and that's coming out in December. It's being clearly positioned as a awards contender, so that one seems kind of obvious to me. Moving right along, why don't we go to A24? You know, the studio that just dominated the 2022 Oscars. You know, last week. setting the record for most above the line wins by a studio ever, sweeping the top six thanks to Everything Everywhere and Brendan Fraser's performance in The Whale. We have to pay attention to A24. We have to pay attention to movies that perhaps are not as traditionally awards friendly as history might have told us. Things have changed. A24, I think, is in a great position once again to be in the mix. I think the number one contender, kind of obviously, would be Past Lives, the directorial debut of Celine Song, starring Greta Lee, who I've liked a lot in comedic roles on in shows like Hacks, but this movie got absolute raves out of Sundance. Is coming out in a few months. This could be one of the first like early release, like Everything Everywhere movies that sustains itself throughout the whole season and is there come award season because it's coming out, I think, like June. So Past Lives seems like a must see at the very least and probably an awards contender for sure. Also from A24, we have Sofia Coppola's next movie, Priscilla. We're going back to the Elvis well, but this time it's about Priscilla Presley, played by Kaylee Spaney, with Jacob Elordi this time playing Elvis. So maybe the lack of distance from Elvis in the awards race could hurt Priscilla. But if it's good, Sofia Coppola, of course, is a well regarded filmmaker in the industry. So one to keep an eye out for. Also from A24, we have Showing Up, the new Kelly Reichardt movie with Michelle Williams and Hong Chow, who of course just got nominated. Both of them did. This movie, was seen back at Cannes 2022, so people have seen it, people like it. So another one from A24. I love Reichardt's last movie, First Cow. I'd probably bet against it being an Oscar contender just because like Kelly Reichardt makes smaller, like humanistic movies. If you're picking an A24 film to be the contender, it's clearly Past Lives as things stand right now, but should be acknowledged for sure. Also, we have Beau is Afraid coming out in April from A24, Ari Aster's follow up to Midsommar, starring Joaquin Phoenix. It's probably too weird and too horror adjacent to realistically be an awards contender, but worth shouting out for sure. Also, we have You Hurt My Feelings from A24, Nicole Holofcener's next movie, starring Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Wouldn't bank on this one, but Holofcener was in the mix recently with Can't You Ever Forgive Me with Melissa McCarthy a few award seasons back, so it's acknowledged that it could be there. And last one would be Alex Garland's Civil War, starring Kirsten Dunst. No guarantee this one comes out. Garland did release a movie in 2022, of course, but something to keep an eye out for. Alex Garland is one of those really unique filmmakers that does all kinds of weird stuff. So who knows? Maybe A24 could find something with him and really run with it. Who can say? Keeping it moving here. How about Emerald Fennell's follow up to Promising Young Woman, an awards contender 2 years ago? This will be Saltburn, starring a who's who, I would say. Barry Keoghan, Jacob Elordi, Rosamund Pike, Richard E. Grant, and Carey Mulligan. That's a movie for MGM and Amazon, and probably is the best chance, assuming the movie's good, probably the best chance Amazon has ever had in the Oscar race. Netflix, of course, has been in the mix, hasn't won Best Picture yet, but Netflix has had lots of big contenders for years now at this point. Apple surprisingly won 2 years ago with Coda, but Amazon has really been out of sorts in award season, but perhaps Saltburn could be the first thing to really change that. A bunch of other stuff we have the knowledge, though, too. How about Rachel Morrison's Flint Strong? Rachel Morrison is a cinematographer. This is her directorial debut here with a movie written by Barry Jenkins and starring Brian Tyree Henry. A lot of pedigree there for sure. Of course, Barry Jenkins goes without saying. Tyree Henry just got nominated, surprisingly, with supporting actors. So if you're picking actors that could like become fixtures and perhaps try and win something soon, I think Tyree Henry is certainly a big contender for that. Another movie that's not dated but seems like it's been filmed and seems like a be in this award season would be The Bike Riders from Jeff Nichols, his first movie in so long since Loving came out several years ago, with Tom Hardy, Michael Shannon, Jodie Comer, and Austin Butler. Another chance for Austin Butler to go back to back with awards acting nominations, I think. In December, we have Leave the World Behind coming out from Sam Esmail. Sam Esmail, making a film after doing tons of TV work for some time. This, of course, is Julia Roberts, Mahershala Ali, and Ethan Hawke. Definitely want to keep an eye on for sure. More stuff, though, for sure. How about Magazine Dreams? Huge reception out of Sundance, not necessarily for the movie itself, but for the performance of none other than Jonathan Majors. This is going to cap the Jonathan Majors 2023 experience. Of course, he was in Ant-Man, he was in Creed 3, but this will be the movie that gets him a acting Oscar nomination. I think if there's one actor to bet on for that nomination, I think it's this right now, as things stand. That's saying a lot because he's going up against people like Fassbender and Bradley Cooper and Leonardo DiCaprio, but I think this is it, and this is going to be the Major's year. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but I think that nomination is incredibly safe. Can't wait for this movie to come out. It got picked up by Searchlight, no date yet, but Magazine Dreams, where Majors plays a bodybuilder. Really excited about it. Other Sundance stuff, just should acknowledge Eileen, starring Anne Hathaway, got a lot of love. Um, let's see. Oh, how about Netflix has a uh, biopic from George C. Wolfe, who does that very well, of course. Rustin, starring Coleman Domingo. I think that one is in the mix. You know, real life person, Netflix behind it. Something to keep an eye on for sure. Firebrand is a historical drama, kind of under the radar, I think, but it's starring Alicia Vikander as Catherine Parr and Jude Law as Henry VIII. Just something to keep an eye on there. I love Vikander. I think she still makes great decisions, great choices, and we know how good and consistent Jude Law is. So, in all likelihood, not an Oscar movie, but perhaps down the line, who could say? Um, Under the radar, I think, as well. There's the swimmer, Diane Nyad, who's getting a biopic from Netflix starring Annette Bening. The reason I think this is significant is because Annette Bening has wanted that Oscar the past few years. Think about movies like 20th Century Women and The Report. She's tried. She's really tried to get that nomination, and now she's playing a real person. She's got Netflix behind her. You know she'll campaign. Just saying. Keep an eye on this one, the Diane Nyad biopic. I don't know if it has a title yet. Um, on the animated front, it's actually a pretty stacked year for like acclaimed filmmakers making animated films. You have Pixar back again with Elemental, Disney back again with Wish. Those are two original creations. Cool. But of course, you have Lord and Miller back with the Spider-Verse sequel, Across the Spider-Verse. You have Hayao Miyazaki's return out of retirement for his final film at Studio Ghibli, How Do You Live? That versus Across the Spider-Verse is probably like the death match when it comes to best animated feature in award season. That's to say nothing of Suzume coming out from Makoto Shinkai, who of course is the creator of Your Name and Weathering with You, two gigantic anime films, especially with Your Name. So I think it's a pretty loaded year for animation, which is fun. Some other stuff here. How about Barbie? Jeez, I should have said that already. Comes out the same day as Oppenheimer. Barbie from Greta Gerwig, starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. If Barbie is really good and like super self-aware and self-referential and witty, you can't put anything past Greta in terms of her CV at this point as a filmmaker. You know, we I judged her when she decided to follow up Lady Bird with Little Women, and she fucked around and made the best version of Little Women ever in a world full of many versions of Little Women. I'm expecting Barbie to be good. Does that mean it resonates with the Oscars and the awards crowd? Not necessarily, but given the pedigree here, and the acting pedigree is no joke either, we should not sleep on Barbie. I'll leave it at that. How about Todd Haynes' new movie, May December, starring Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore? Sure. How about Luca Guadagnino's new film, Challengers, starring Zendaya? Sure. Challengers, though, is coming out in August, which is kind of a questionable release date for something with awards aspirations, but Luca, Zendaya, worth acknowledging for sure. Some stuff out of Sundance as well. How about Passages, starring Franz Rogowski and Ben Whishaw? I think that one maybe a sneaky contender for this. I think it was arguably like the most celebrated movie out of Sundance 2023. And Franz Rogowski has kind of been like the secret weapon of like European filmmaking for some time. And he hasn't really blown up yet, in the United States. But, and I don't know if this is necessarily the movie to do that either, but he's really good, and we know how good Ben Whishaw is, so keep an eye on that. Also, Netflix picked up out of Sundance 2023 Fair Play, which is kind of like an erotic thriller movie with Alden Ehrenreich and Phoebe Dayner. That movie was supposed to be excellent out of Sundance, and it's going to come out, second half of the year. So I'm excited about that one. Hard to imagine like that being the Netflix movie that breaks through, given they have a lot of contenders this year. But keep an eye on it for sure. Let's see, anything else? I mean, like I said, it's like 40 movies right here. Yeah, I think that's it. It's a bunch of A24 stuff. bunch of just celebrated filmmakers and celebrated actors. Like we got a big year. Oh, and one thing that hard to say this is going to come out this year for this award season, but Steve McQueen, his next film, following up the Small Axe series he did for Prime, his next film is Blitz, a World War II film starring Saoirse Ronan. That is filming right now, so it's not done. Given it's a war film with some bombing, I don't know. Maybe there's a long post process. So don't necessarily know if it's this award season yet. If it is, it's going to come out like December, January time because they clearly got to work on it still. But Steve McQueen goes without saying. Obviously, Saoirse Ronan, 4 acting nominations before the age of 30, goes without saying. If that comes out, that is a contender. But maybe that's the next award season. Not sure yet. But that's a lot of movies. That's not going. There's going to be stuff that's nominated across the categories that I didn't acknowledge. That's just how it goes. But I feel like I outlined a good amount of them. And assuming a lot of that stuff does in fact come out, as I expect it to, we'll get a good, purview of it. So I think it's a pretty loaded year. Think about Best Actor, for example, with Bradley Cooper and Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonathan Majors and Adam Driver. It's a loaded name list of who's who's really exciting. Directing talent, so much to think about there. Um, but yeah, let me know, what are you most excited about from that list? What do you think is the best lock for Oscar nomination at this point? Again, it's early, so I'm not going to hold you to it, but let me know, what did you think about that list? Like, what is your pick? And for more movie reviews, more Oscar predictions, award season talk, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.